the What About You podcast, and I have Kirk Maronge here, and we'll start with a prayer. Today I just pray for gratitude, thank the Lord for the opportunity of today, and that Kirk, I, and everybody else in the world makes the most of the opportunities that today can be and move in the positive direction that God would want us to go with today. Be a little nicer to people than we might otherwise be. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And so, Kirk, would you start by just telling me about your parents and growing up and all that?
Yes, my father was Anthony Joseph Maronge Sr. My mother was Jill Robichaud Maronge, and both of my parents were from Algiers. Grew up there, and so the first part of my life was, I guess the first 3 years I lived in Algiers. And then at that point, parents bought a house in Marrero, and then that's where I grew up all the way through high school in Marrero. I attended Visitation of Our Lady school in Marrero from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. I played ball at Pard Playground in Marrero my whole life until going to high school. Once I left Visitation of Our Lady, I went to Archbishop Shaw High School in Marrero, and in 1984, graduated in 1988. Played football for Archbishop Shaw. My senior year, we won the state championship in 1987. At that time, the highest classification was 4A. Mm-hmm. We won the 4A state championship in the Superdome.
So that just happens to be a coincidence that you are a senior and then y'all win the state championship, huh?
Yeah, that was my last game of my career, man. It was pretty incredible.
But some famous quarterbacks, I think, have come through Shaw, right? Like, was it Bubby Brister or John Forcade?
John Forcade. Mickey Joseph was a year older than me. He graduated in 87.
So he was a big...
Yeah, Tom Osborne came to the school to recruit him. He ended up playing, signing a scholarship at the University of Nebraska.
Where did he play at Nebraska?
He played quarterback.
Okay, because a lot of times back then, if you're an African-American quarterback in high school, they would try to convert you to, cornerback or some other position. But McCartney, I guess, was ahead of his time with that.
Right. Mickey was so athletic, he could have played anywhere on the field. It just so happened at that time, Coach Hank Tierney, he ran the option offense. And so he always put his best athlete, his best player at quarterback. And Mickey would just take over games by himself. But it was interesting because his senior year, my junior year, we were supposed to win the state championship because it was, Mickey Joseph. And then we ended up losing in the playoffs that year. And so the following year, my senior year, his younger brother, Vance Joseph.
Oh, I know that name too. He played, though, a different position in the NFL. He went to the NFL.
Yeah, he played defensive back in the NFL, but he did go on to play quarterback at the University of Colorado. But Vance was a sophomore that year, and he started at quarterback my senior year, and we went on to win the state championship against Covington 14-6 in 1987.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
It's like a storybook for somebody growing up playing football their whole life, playing at Pard, and you get to be a senior and you win the state championship.
The last time I suited up, pretty neat. Nice. Walking across the Superdome floor when you know it's your last game. Mm-hmm. Not many people get to walk out of a facility the last game of their career with a victory as the state champion. So it was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah. All right. And so that reminds me about with Mickey not making it, not because of him or whatever. It just so happens Shaw didn't make it that year, but it made it the next year. if you're like a decade later, that happened with Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
You know, he was a senior. Everybody's like, oh, Tennessee's going to win the national championship. They didn't. Then the next year, they make it, you know, with the next quarterback. I forget the guy's name, but
yeah, it was a similar type of situation.
Another thing is, I don't know if it came around that time, but there was a famous song. I don't know who did it, but originally it was an Eazy-E song, and then they adapted it. Somebody adapted it, a local artist, to Marrero.
Yeah.
Was that when you were in high school?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was awesome. You know, coming back on the bus rides back to school after the game. You know, we won a lot of games, so it's what the fellas be yelling, Marrero.
Awesome,
yeah, that
man.
was it was pretty cool. That was kind of a staple for us.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So then after Shaw, where did you go from there?
So after I graduated from Shaw in May of 1988, I went to LSU. I spent 5 years at LSU, and actually I should have graduated in 4.5 years, but I lived next door to a couple of LSU baseball players, Paul Bird, Gary Hemel, some of them guys off of the 91 national championship team at LSU. So I took, 6 or 9 hours my final semester. I took a coaching football class. I just took some things that I probably really didn't need just to graduate in May instead of December to stay for that last baseball season at LSU. And we ended up winning the second national championship in '93 by Skip Bertman at LSU.
When was the first one?
91.
91. So
I was a student there at
He
the
didn't
time.
win any in the 80s,
No.
Skip. But then after that, he got rolling 4 or 5 or something
We won
like
5 in 10 years,
Yeah.
which is incredible.
Yeah, and I came to LSU when you were leaving. I went to Brother Martin and the Grub and Metairie, and then I went to I played at Girard.
Okay.
But I didn't play athletics in high school. But when I came to LSU in '93, well, a couple of things strike me. One is that, especially back then, felt like I was out in the sticks. You know, like I was out in the country being in Baton Rouge. And it's not like that nowadays. I mean, especially since Katrina, Baton Rouge has really boomed.
It's grown so much. I mean, when you go up there now, the development from when we were in school is just tremendous. I mean, at that time, it was LSU, the campus. They just keep growing outward, not towards the city, but, towards the interstate down Nicholson. It's incredible to see, the development over the years since we were in school there in the 80s and 90s. It's growth.
Did you experience, one thing I experienced is that for the first time with people that were different, and that like before, all growing up, New Orleans is like a Catholic town, and you don't even think about that. There's plenty of people that are Protestant and everything, but it's kind of Catholic culture to it. And when I went to LSU, it seemed to be like there's some animosity from people outside of New Orleans about people from New Orleans, or just about New Orleans in general. And also there's like a tension between the Catholic versus Protestant a little bit. Did you get any sense of that or no?
Yeah, I didn't realize people weren't Catholic until I got to LSU in Baton Rouge. And it was interesting because my first semester, I stayed in Kirby Smith. In the first week of the semester, the guy knocks on the door handing out leaflets. Look, we have a prayer group that's going to meet on such and such a night, on the second floor, Bible study. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. In going to college, I knew there was going to be so many other things out there. The one thing that I wanted to stay consistent with was my faith. So I attended the Bible study. I found, the Catholic Church on campus. And I used to go to Mass at 9 o'clock on Sunday night. I'd have all my work done, everything. That was my routine. I'd go to Mass, go home, get in bed, and I was mentally prepared for the next week. So, I think it's important, and that's what I tell all the young people that I work with. If you don't intentionally try to continue to work on your Catholic faith when you go to college, it's going to be a little bit harder to do the things that you need to do because there's so many distractions.
Yeah.
And that's just something that worked for me.
No, it's true. It's like putting the right things in your body. It makes you who you're supposed to be. And one of those things is spending time with God, in church, in mass, that kind of thing. But also, I think I talked about with Casey, when you're, eating right, drinking water, when you're getting some cardio, this kind of stuff like that, those kind of things also can, when I do that, I feel better.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so from LSU, graduated in 93, where'd you go to next?
So when I graduated in 93, through the career planning and placement office in the SEBA building at the time, I interviewed for a couple of jobs during my last semester. I ended up getting an offer for this company in Houston. And growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, and at that time I couldn't relocate. I didn't have the funds to do that. So I just came back home and, dabbled, and I worked at a car dealership for the summer. And, finally I got a call. My uncle, Stanley Goday, was at the time was the principal at Buras High School. And it was getting close to school time starting, and they had a critical need that they needed a teacher to teach a couple of classes the first half of the day at Boothville-Venice High School, and then after lunch 2 classes at Buras High School, and they were looking for somebody to coach as well. So he reached out to me and said, "Look, I know why you waiting," because my degree from LSU is in business administration. I majored in finance. That's what my degree's in. But he said, "Look, why are you trying to figure out what you want to do? You want to come teach and coach?" And I was like, you know what? Yeah, the things I did my entire life from the time I was born, I played sports and I was a very good student. And I loved school. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give that a try, even if it's just for a year. And once I got around the kids and coaching, involved in athletics and, teaching in the classroom, it was a done deal. It was like, so I've never actually worked out in the business world from the time I graduated from LSU. I've been in the schools. This is my 30th year. So I spent that 1 year in Plaquemines Parish, and then I guess it was sometime in the spring, a guy, Mark Shreve, who played with me at Shaw, he was coaching the linebackers, and Jay Roth had got the head coaching job at Rummel. And so he asked Mark Shreve to come to him, so they had a spot open at Shaw. And I got that phone call, asking me if I would be interested when they found out I was coaching, to come over to Shaw. And so I did, going back to my alma mater and coaching and teaching, just being back on the campus was phenomenal for me. So I spent 8 years. First 5 years, I taught computer applications, economics, accounting, and I coached football. In the first couple of years, I coached baseball as well. And after a couple of years, guy that graduated with me that was working with me, Ty Delger, he took over the track program as the head coach. And so I switched from baseball to track. And then 5 years, once I was there 5 years, Brother Jim Wiegand, who was longtime athletic director at Shaw, even when I played, he was retiring and moving back to New York, where the Salesians live. And so I threw my name in the hat to be the athletic director. And so in 2000, from 2000 to 2003, I took over as the athletic director there. And then in 2003, I took a job at Salle High School as the Dean of Admissions and Student Life, and I was there for 2 years. Really I didn't want to leave De La Salle, but I got offered a job by Archbishop Rummel High School. They were creating a position in the development office as a director of marketing and community relations. One of the things at the time, they were trying to build a stadium. I don't know if you remember that on their campus. And part of my job was supposed to be, to spearhead that stadium project. So it intrigued me, and, I went over there, and I was at Rummel for 10 years, from 2005 to 2015.
So you got there, got started, and Hurricane Katrina hit.
I worked my last day at De La Salle, July 31st, went home, went to sleep, woke up, and drove to Archbishop Rummel. And it was, I had worked that summer, and I'll never forget that day. We had the jamboree, football jamboree, and I didn't even really know there was a storm coming. And I get in my car after we played in the football jamboree at Joe Yenny Stadium. And when I turned in on 870, they just, go home, pack your stuff, you got to get out of here. And so I did. I went home. We got everything together and to evacuate the next day. And then Katrina happened, and, we were gone for 2 weeks. We actually went back to school at Archbishop Rummel and started a transition school. So we had about 13 to 1,500 of our students going to school from 6 a.m. to noon, and then there was a break between noon and 1, and then we had another 1,300, 1,500 students, whatever it was, that from all other schools in the area that came back home to this, we called it Rummel T. It was Archbishop Rummel Transition School in the evening. So I went back to work right away, and myself and our alumni director at the time, Darryl Rule, we were asked to take over the finance. We were like the finance office for the transition school. And then once everybody went back to their own schools, then, we kind of just everybody got back to work in our regular positions. But while at Archbishop Rummel for 10 years, for the first part of my career there, I was the director of marketing and community relations. I did the branding, for the school, and dealt with all the auxiliary groups, and I was the link between them and the school, and I was able to do a lot of work over at Archbishop Rummel. And then
you were able to help get the stadium built?
No, so the stadium didn't happen.
Oh.
The people in the neighborhood, it didn't happen. They had got a organization together, no stadium, and they had signs in the front yard, and the people in the community that lived in that area didn't want it. Oh. They didn't want cars parked all over. They didn't want the lights on at night and stuff like that. So that stadium project never did happen.
So they play at Tad Gormley?
Well, and that's what happened with out at Zephyr Field. A lot of them started playing out at Zephyr Field. It's, the unfortunate thing in the Catholic League is, right now the only school that has their own stadium is Archbishop Shaw. So, we deal with the same thing here with soccer, trying to find places to play. We play at Pan Am, we play at Tad. This year we started playing some games out at Lafreniere Park. There's only so many facilities to go around. In Jefferson Parish, they played games at Yenny. The home stadium is Yenny for Archbishop Rummel. The home stadium for Shaw used to be Horst Memstus on the West Bank. But the public schools in Jefferson Parish get first choice at the Jefferson Parish schools. The public schools in Orleans Parish get first choice at, the stadiums available in Orleans Parish. So, which is why the Catholic League games, a lot of time, they've had to play on Saturday at 2 or Saturday at 7 because, those public school games got the prime time on Friday night. Now, they pull, sometimes Brother Martin, Holy Cross, Jesuit in these schools will get a Friday night game, in some of these stadiums. Some of the public schools might play in the afternoon on Friday or whatever, right after school. So, this past year, Archbishop Rummel played, I think, 2 or 3 games at Strawberry Stadium in Hammond just so they could play on a Friday night. So the stadium availability with so many schools trying to play it's a challenge.
Yeah, people from the outside think, oh, you work at a private school, Catholic school, so y'all must have all the money in the world, all the funding. But it's the opposite. Is the public schools, they have more than double probably the funding that a Catholic school has, because we basically have to rely on the people who are sending their kid to the school here, and they only have so much money, whereas the government they can kind of print new money if they really need to, so to speak.
All right, well, that money's set. Our
they got
schools
tax
and
money.
private schools, you have to, the money from tuition, but outside of that, you have to raise money to do different things. So it's just a challenge, all over. And, I took over I'm not sure, I think it was 2009. I was still doing the marketing and community relations at Rummel, and they added the position as assistant athletic director. So, Phil Greco was a long time AD at Rummel, and so I assisted with him with the athletic programs there for, I think I did that all the way until I left. But in 2012, the dean of students was leaving, so they asked me if I would step in as the dean of students. So I did that job as well for the last 3 years that I was at Archbishop Rummel.
That's a tough situation to be in, to be the dean of students, I find, because with a lot of times when I know somebody who has, before they've been the dean, and they step into being the dean, and then the students are saying, whoa, he or she, they're so mean, this and that. And I say, no. If you were to see this person before, when they were a teacher or they were a coach or whatever, they're just like anybody else, a very nice person. That's just the job of a dean, is to enforce the rules. So you're always going to see them as like the bad guy a lot of times, right?
Well, it's a challenge, and sometimes just the way I was is, well, I'm gonna tell you everything up front. When we would have these grade level meetings and all that, and these are the expectations. If you don't meet these expectations, it's not my fault. A lot of times as the dean of students, I say you're the bearer of bad news, but technically I told you the expectations up front, and it's a respect thing. I had a great relationship with the kids over there, and a lot of times if somebody had to be disciplined, you tell them what you did was wrong, correct? And they know they did wrong. And just like in life, when you do something wrong, there's a consequence. And it's not being mean, it's just, that's protocol. And I think the relationship that you build with the students, is almost like they didn't want to disappoint me. And kids did. They didn't do everything the right way, but more than not, when you, just like in the classroom, you build a relationship with your students, they're not going to want to let you down, so therefore they're going to rise up to the occasion. It's kind of the same thing. I'm not going to say it was an easy job, because it's not. Sometimes you have to you're dealing with people's feelings, different things, but it's what has to be done, and it's part of that job. Yeah.
All right. And then, so after dean of students at Rummel, where do you go from Rummel?
So in 2015, that's when I came here to Cabrini. I started that summer. Actually, they didn't have my office in the cafeteria yet. I worked out at an admissions conference room for that summer until school started, right here across from your classroom. So when I came here, I had done a lot of different things throughout my career. I've been an athletic director. I've been a dean of students. I was the dean of admissions and student life at De La Salle. So I worked in the development office at Archbishop Rummel. So I came, and they had several needs here. At the time, the president, Audley Hanneman, I took pictures. I dealt with the website. So when I came here, I could drive the bus. There was a lot of different things I could do that they were looking and needed some help with. So, when I got here, I filled a couple of different roles, taking pictures for the website, doing some different things like that, as well as being, my first year was the assistant athletic director, and I was teaching. I taught economics, I taught accounting, I taught a business law at one point, but that was only for about maybe 2 years. And then Janelle Bozant retired. And then I took over my second year. I took over as the athletic director, and I've been here 9 years. This is my 9th year, my 30th year overall, but 9 years at Cabrini. And so the first year I taught was assistant AD, and then the second year I only taught accounting, 1 or 2 classes, and then I was the full-time athletic director, and then it's been that way for the last 8 years. And now I'm not teaching any classes.
And I noticed maybe in the last couple of years you won some sort of awards for being AD, right?
Yeah, last year it was Athletic Director of the Year for Louisiana. It was nominated, which was very nice. This award, I was nominated by the staff of the LHSAA, so it was the National High School Athletic Directors Association. I was Louisiana's nominee as the Louisiana Athletic Director of the Year for the National Association. So it meant a lot to me, just because the people that run the LHSAA office had recognized the work that I did, and not only for our kids in our school. I work with new athletic directors, in this area and across the state, just to try to help them when they're trying to get into this job, with some of the things, because it's a lot of work, understanding all the different rules, and the handbook changes every year, and it's just a lot of work. And I have 30 years of working with this stuff, and the knowledge of things, the historical perspective on how things have changed throughout the years in the LHSAA, and the current things that are new. So it's a lot of information and a lot of things, and you don't learn it overnight.
I think that really, like that recognition about 80 of the year, and then being nominated by the LHSAA, by the staff themselves, that's the kind of thing where, I don't know, when you're having a downtime, or you're having a time where it's saying, I'm putting all this in. Does anybody really appreciate it? Does anybody, care that all these things I'm giving up, all these things I'm sacrificing for this? And then you get something like that, and you're like, oh, no, people do, they might not say anything, but people recognize, that. And so it's not only that I'm just doing the right thing, I'm doing what God put me on the earth here for, but even just the other people, they might not say it, but they recognize, all the time I'm putting in.
Right. And that's what made it so special for me is, I don't ever do anything. I don't want recognition. I'm trying to create the best possible experience for the young people that I serve. And, when you do things, because I believe, and I tell my kids, I tell the kids here that I work with, and this is the way I think of it. When the Lord blesses you with gifts, skills, and abilities, it's your responsibility to use those, not for yourself, but for the benefit of others. And just to be recognized that, because I had one of the staff members at the LHSAA say, man, you everywhere. It's you drive the bus, you helping out coaching, you working the softball field, you doing this, and it's just what I do. The reason I'm in this business is for the kids, and I believe every morning when I wake up, it's my responsibility to try to do everything I can for the young people that I serve. I'm a vehicle. If the Lord uses me as a vehicle to make people's lives better, in a positive way, then, that's what I've been charged with.
Yeah, and I think Another way that you do is because the young people on all the different athletic programs at Cabrini and at other schools and stuff like that, they see how hard you're working, and then you lead by example that way, because then once they graduate and get a job, eventually all those types of things, then they've been around somebody and other people who are devoted to their work for the benefit of others, and then so that's just the way you're supposed to do it, and then they do that, and so it spreads.
Yeah, we are all, you in the classroom, what we do, people observe us every second, so it's a lot. It's our obligation as you and I, Catholic men. I think that's extremely important for these young women here at Cabrini High School to see, what a good Catholic Christian man, how you act. I think it's very important for us to be very strong role models for the young people that we serve.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Kirk. We sure appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'll see you next time.
Yes, sir. Have a blessing.